Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We are the Point and Swing Big Band. My name is Steve Elmy. Happy to be here with you this afternoon. I really don't have much of a job today except to really protect you guys from the band. Things get out of control here, so wave your hands if you do need that help at any point. I want to just take a minute to, first of all, thank Mike Fields, who really conceived this event and put it together, founded the band over 20 years ago. We'll hear more from Mike as the afternoon goes on, as well as from the charities that would be benefiting from your generosity and the band's generosity. Thank you, band, this afternoon. I want to take just a quick second to introduce the trombones. That was God Rest Ye Merry Trombones, arranged by Tom Kubis. There's a note at the end of our music that says, God arrest the trombones. We'll hold off for another 2 hours with that one. But want to be sure that you meet the band here as we go through. Thanks, Mike. We're being very discreet here today. On your left, Nicole Briantine. Next to Nicole, that's Mr. Ed Broadwin. And next to Ed, Mr. Raymond Shea. And holding down the very bottom of the band today on bass trombone, Mr. Steve Benson. Dr. Steve Benson. We have no idea, Steve. He's just Steve to us. The trombone guy. A lot of other people. Next, we have a Gordon Goodwin tune. We're going to be mixing up sort of holiday and some more traditional non-holiday charts for this afternoon. This is Count Bubba by Gordon Goodwin.
6 beats. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Please welcome Mr. Dave Lubeck on the tenor saxophone solo. On the background trumpet, Mr. Hiro Tokushige. We're going to bring up Deirdre Peterson to join us for a couple of tunes here. We're very fortunate to have Deirdre in our local neighborhood, so to speak, over back in Westborough. A couple of years ago, Deirdre had the honor of being a finalist in the Michael Feinstein American Songbook competition. Is that close? Pretty close. So we're fortunate to have Deirdre back from college on break and enjoy it.
Watch out, you better not cry, you better not pout, I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town. He's making a list, he's checking it twice, gonna find out who's naughty or nice. Santa Claus is coming to town. He sees you when you're sleeping, he knows when you're if you've been better good, so be good for goodness sake. Oh, you better watch out, you better not cry, you better not pout, I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town. When she's got it on
Deirdre. Also featured on Santa Claus is Coming to Town, you heard some trumpet, Mr. Brian Keefe in the back. We're going to shift gears back to the holiday book with two. Christmas Time is Here from the Peanuts.
4 beats. I'm sorry, 3 beats. 1, 2, 3.
Christmas Time is Here featured Ed Broadwin. Introducing Ed again on trombone. And Eric Shiggy, thank you. And introducing John Baskin on alto. And on Feliz Navidad, of course, Ed again. And Don Blanchard back on guitar. We're going to change things around a little bit again with Soul Bossa Nova. is Mr. Mark Holloway on alto sax. Next tune is written by a guy by the name, Barry's next player actually, written by the name of Dennis de Blasio, played for years and years in the Maynard Ferguson band before semi-retiring to academia. Honors a television series, recently celebrated the 50th anniversary. I grew up with that. A lot of my education I owe or blame to Sesame Street.
Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer had a very shiny nose, and if you ever saw it, you would even say it close. All of the other reindeer used to laugh and call him names. They never let poor Rudolph join in any reindeer game. Then one foggy Christmas Eve, Santa came to
On the piano, Mr. Matt Grandweiss. Also Steve Sachs and David Lubick again. We're going to wrap up our first set with the classic sleigh ride. We're going to spend a few minutes hearing from our charities and then jump back into the music. So sit tight and we'll be back soon. This is Sleigh Ride.
4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Thank you. Again, a great pleasure to have you. Thank you to St. Mark's for having us, for hosting all of us today. Thank you, any folks in the St. Mark's community out there. Also like to send a special thank you to the back to Joseph Resnichek for managing all of our sound today. Thank you. I'd like to again remind you of the two charities in your program that we're holding this event for. Thank you for those that have bought tickets ahead, already donated, or if you're considering donating on the way out. I want to hand it over to Mike Fields, again, who founded the band 20 years ago or so, and arranged the whole thing, and to tell us a little bit about the charities and introduce some speakers. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Steve. So, when I started this band, it was out of EMC Corporation, so now they're merged with Dell, but we still have some charter members from that band, including Mr. Brian Keefe, our equipment manager in the back. Our guitarist, Don Blanchard, is 1 year shy of being a charter member, so special shout out to them. I'd like to introduce a woman who is the Director of Development and Communications for Abby's House, Miss Colleen McGoldrich, and she's going to give a little bit of an intro on what Abby's House is all about. So thank you, Colleen. You can take the vocal mic over there. I appreciate that. If Rob could be queued up after, I'd appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Mike, and to the Point and Swing Band for the incredible performance that you all are putting on today. And I'd like to thank you all in the audience for taking time out of your busy schedules. I know the holiday season is crazy for everyone, so I really appreciate you all taking the time to be here this afternoon. As Mike said, I'm the Development and Communication Specialist for Abby's House. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Abby's House, I'm just going to share a little bit about our history with you. So back in around 1973, our founder, Annette Rafferty, was part of the Worcester Urban Ministry Commission, and she was asked to chair a task force to find out why there were all these new homeless women in the streets of Worcester. At the time, there were only 3 shelter beds available for women, and they noticed a bunch of women out on the streets, and they wanted to know what was going on. So, as the chair of this task force, Annette personally went out herself, spoke to the women directly, spoke with hospitals, just with different organizations to find out what exactly was going on. She collected the women's stories and then went back to the task force with her findings and said that she recommended that a shelter be opened to help all of these women. The task force said, "Thank you very much for going out and taking the time. Unfortunately, we're unable to do anything right now," and that was kind of it. And if anyone here has met Annette, you know that that was not an acceptable answer for her. So that day she said, "Thank you very much. I'm going to send in my resignation," and she left. She then gathered up a group of volunteers and spent the next 2 years doing a little bit of campaigning, researching, finding a property, and on June 7th, 1976, she opened Abby's House, a 9-bed shelter for women with or without their children. Over the next few years, she and a group of volunteers continued working, listening to the women, and they realized that, unfortunately, the solution to solving homelessness was not shelter. It was affordable, supportive housing. So they found a property on Crown Hill, a couple houses over from our shelter, and they purchased that property, rehabbed it, and they opened up 16 units of supportive housing for women. A few years later, they were having a bunch of women and children come in. They realized they needed family housing, so a street over, they purchased a property on Chatham Street, which has 7 2-bedroom apartments for women and families and their children. And then a few years after that, the Sisters of Mercy approached them to purchase their building on High Street, which is where our facilities are mainly run out of right now. And that was 54 units of housing for women. We just finished a renovation this summer to expand that property, update major systems, make it ADA accessible so that women who have special needs like wheelchairs or just need a little extra support can now access that building. And we have expanded our services to include 79 units now of affordable supportive housing for women and children. I just want to let you all know that none of that would have been possible without our community and supporters like you. So I really just want to thank you all so much and really appreciate you taking the time today. Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen. Happy to do this. I'd like to next recognize the CASA project. This is near and dear to my family's heart, as my wife Jennifer here is a CASA volunteer, court-appointed special advocate. And this is my Christmas present to you. Merry Christmas. So, yes, 16 and a half wonderful years. My daughter Amanda there. Next, I'd like to bring up Mr. Rob Zargis, who's Dr. Rob Zargis, excuse me, and he is the Executive Director for the CASA project. Rob, microphone's all yours.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Thank you, Jennifer. You do an amazing job for us as a volunteer. And how about the band? Amazing or what? Well, Christmas time is a time where often we think about children. And our organization is CASA Project in Worcester County. CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates. So we recruit and train volunteers from the community who are appointed by judges to advocate for kids who have been removed from their home because of abuse and neglect and are in the foster care system. And in the holiday season, that's really tough for kids to be in the foster care system for 2 reasons. One, they're separated from their family. But secondly, they're starting to see something that maybe they've always longed for in their own family, and they're seeing that in their foster family. And so we're very thankful for this event and for you raising money on our behalf, and thank you so much for all who came out. CASA Project was started in 1981. It was after a judge in Seattle had decided that he was trying to make these decisions about where children should go, whether they should go back home with the family that they were removed from, or whether they should be freed for adoption. And he realized he wasn't getting the kind of information he needed to make that very austere decision in the child's life. So he left the bench and he started the first CASA program in Seattle, Washington, where he started to recruit volunteers from the community to be his eyes and ears and get the information that he needed to make the decisions that he needed to make. And 20, almost 30 years later, here we are today with CASA projects serving all of Worcester County. Every single town either has a child that's been removed or a child that is in a foster home in Worcester County. And last year, about 1,700 kids were removed from their homes because of abuse and neglect in Worcester County. We were lucky enough to be able to serve 906 of those children, and our goal is to be able to serve every child, obviously. And so we're here to raise money and also to raise awareness that there are a lot of children out there that need somebody to be their voice. And just like Jennifer is and many other people, over 400 volunteers that work with us, are the voice of children in Worcester County. We still need more. So if you're interested in becoming a volunteer, go to our website, www.thecasaproject.org, or if you're interested in learning more about what we do, please reach out and I'd be happy to come. I'd go anywhere to talk to anybody about anything about CASA, so I'll be happy to do that as well. Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you so much for this, and Dan, thank you. You're amazing.
Glenn Miller is in the mood. Thank you again to our charities, and thank you again to all of you. Thanks to St. Mark's. Just a terrific time of year to help out some folks in need here. We're going to shift gears back to the holiday charts here with Jingle Bells. Keeping us on track with the great bass line there, Mr. Warren Olson.
Yeah. Two, one, two, three, four.
I think that was Steve Saxon back there. Woo!
Miss the Saturday night. Don't get around anymore.
Politics, featuring the trumpet section, Steve Sachs, Stereotypic Shoegaze, Brian Keith, and introducing Tim Keith.
One, two, three.
Thank
Deirdre for one last tune.
One, two, three.
Santa baby, sleep safe under the tree for me. Been an awful girl, Santa baby, and hurry down the chimney tonight. Santa baby, a 54 convertible to light blue. I'll wait up for you, dear Santa baby, and hurry down the chimney tonight. Think of all the fun I've missed. Think of all the fellas that I haven't kissed. Next year I could be oh so good if you took off my Christmas list. Santa baby, I want a yacht that's really not alive. Been an angel all year, Santa baby, and hurry down the chimney tonight. Think of all the fun I've missed. Think of all the fellas that I haven't kissed. Next year I could be oh so good if you check my Christmas list. Santa baby, I want a yacht that's really not alive. Been an angel all year, Santa baby, and hurry down the chimney tonight. Hurry down the chimney tonight. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you again, Miss Deirdre Peterson.
Thank you.
Thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. Thanks for taking the time to be with us. Thanks for supporting our charities today. We're going to end our event today with a tune. I was trying to think of what to say about closing a Christmas concert with this tune. The only thing I can think is to say that it's been a tradition of the band to end with this particular arrangement. I think originally, long before Doc was with us, it was designed to keep the drummer from packing up before the end of the gig. This is our rendition featuring Doc Dorico on drums, Sing, Sing, Sing. Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure to be with you. Happy holidays.